I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning, everybody. It is Tuesday, January 19th, 2021. This is the Mitchell County Board of Supervisors meeting. We are at the Mitchell County Courthouse. It is 8:30, and everybody has a chance to look at the agenda. If there's any additions or corrections, if not, have a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
We have a motion,
I'll second that.
and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Approve the minutes of the January 12th meeting, so. Any changes for that? If none.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Seconded. We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of January 12th. All in favor, say aye. Aye. County Attorney, are you there,
Yes.
Mark?
Yes, I am.
We will let you have the floor if you have something for us.
I just see that Comiskey is on there. I see Mark Ross is here. Mark, have you driven past recently?
Yeah, I went out there yesterday, Mark. I just sent you some photos this morning. I don't know if you checked your email yet or not, but he's down to he's got 3 trucks that are there. That's all I can see. The one that was on the trailer got hauled away. So looks like 3 vehicles. I'm not sure if they're all licensed, but that's what he's down to anyway.
So it sounds like he's apparently attempting to clean up his,
Yeah, he's still got some junk and debris laying around the yard that should be cleaned up, but it looks like he's moving the right direction. I can continue to monitor it, but I don't know. What do you think, Mark?
My thoughts are just send him a nice letter saying thank you. You know, there's still some junk that needs to be cleaned up. If you have any questions, contact Mark Ross and we can go from there. Sounds like he's trying to get in compliance.
Yeah, that sounds like the best plan to me, too.
any
So
comments?
that's what I'll do if that's all right with everybody on the board.
Good. Sounds like everybody's for that idea.
Okay, the only other thing, and you've all seen my email, and people are asking me, are you in favor of Tony being an employee of Mitchell County, or you're against it? And my comment is I have no opinion on that. If that's what the board wants to do, that's your decision. If that's not what the board wants to do, that's your decision. I just want to make sure that legally we can do it until we get a response back from John Danos. I would, just say we should probably wait. You should probably wait on doing anything. I've looked at the bylaws, and it certainly looks like you can do that. It's legal for you to do that according to the bylaws. I just don't want to jeopardize, those grants. And I just want to make sure it's all right to do it. And when we hear back from Danos, then we'll know. So.
Yes, thank you. We've been waiting back from him ourselves, so yes, we'll be waiting then, Mark.
Okay, I don't have anything else unless you have some questions.
All righty. I don't see anybody bobbing their head, so thank you, Mark. Moving on, report, sheriff report for December.
Yeah, good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Good morning.
So I have fees for you this morning collected in December, $6,485.65. If you look at the treasurer's report that I provide to you For the new members, I'll just run through this real quick so you understand what it all is. Service fees would be fees that we collect when we serve papers across the county. The ACC/INC report, those are accident and incident reports that people will come in for, and we charge $5 for each one of those reports. So that's what that is. Mileage is pretty self-explanatory on our trips that we make. To serve papers, we can charge mileage, and we do that amount to $102.65. Sex offender registry, those folks, it costs them to register. That was that fee. The weapons permit acquires, those are folks that come in and get a permit just to acquire a firearm, not to carry one. Those are $25 a piece, so that totaled $100 for the month of December. And then the weapons permit county, those are permits to carry, and those are $50 permits, and so you see the fees there. Down on the jail fingerprint cards, people come in for employment issues or background checks, such things like that. We charge for fingerprinting. It's $10 to do that, so that's what that fee is. The R&B 40, R&B 60, that's the room and board fees that we collect. You see two of those. The first two are fees that we collect in Mitchell County for our inmates. And then the room and board OTH, which is other, which is a split 60-40 in the account that I talked about maybe a week or so ago. Those are for out-of-county holds. So if we're holding for Floyd County, for example, right now we have one for Butte County. They're charged $60 a day, and then once we get payment from those counties, it goes into that type of fund. And so the total of those two funds is the $6,485.65. Any questions on that?
I think you said it before, maybe you just did now, Sheriff, the not out-of-county inmates, is that $50 a day that you get?
No, it's a flat $60
They're like
fee.
60, okay.
Yep, whether there are inmates or out of counties.
Okay.
Yep. And that's pretty standard across the state. It may vary $10 one way or the other. But it's a $50 to $60 fee is what counties charge.
All right, do we have any other comments on this?
This pretty much stays the same month to month, or is it?
Pretty much, Mike, you'll see some variances in the room and board fees. They're getting harder and harder to collect. Defendants now typically don't have the ability to pay, so the courts do not order them to pay, where in the past, that wasn't an issue. The defense that I don't have the ability to pay was never raised, it is now. And some of them are pretty successful on that, and then their room and board fees are waived. And then I can't collect those. In the instances where somebody does have the ability to pay, the county attorney's office asks for that in sentencing, and we get that. That affects just our inmates in the county. So if we're holding for another county, the county's paying that bill, not the inmate. Yeah, and so it just depends on, primarily Floyd County inmates come our way, how busy they get, cases that they develop if they need to separate inmates. Sometimes female inmates can cause an issue for a jail, not in terms of behavior, but just in housing, and the rules that need to be followed, and some of the jails can't accommodate that over a long period of time, so that we can some of those things.
Maybe currently.
I believe there's 5 this morning. Yeah.
Well, do we have any motions to approve the sheriff's report?
I'll move to approve the sheriff's report for December.
We have a motion. Seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any nays? Hearing none. Sheriff's report is approved. Thank you.
You
Have
bet.
anything else for us?
I don't believe I do. No, thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Yep, you guys have a good day.
Have a quiet week. moving on. County engineer update.
Good morning.
Good morning.
One thing I handed out to you before, I think I mentioned before the meeting, was I gave you a little synopsis of how the secondary roads department is funded. Just kind of an update on how it looks, where the money comes from, and what certain funds can be spent on. Just give you some light reading. If you have questions, you can contact me on that. We don't need to go through it right now. But just kind of an update as to where we are with projects we have planned, and everything else. You know, we talked about last week where Hickory and Kirkwood may not be conducive to the current funding sources we have right now unless there's TIF involved, or we figure out a way to stretch projects beyond where we're at now as far as repairs and maintenance go. So just, if you want to read through that and just kind of evaluate a little bit, that's what it's there for, so you guys have a better understanding of how we're funded and where the money's going. And then, that being said, just off topic there, we are out scraping up gravel roads today. We did yesterday. We didn't run Friday, Saturday, just because with the amount of snow we got, we always try to get a base down before we plow, and with the dry summer and dry fall, the rock didn't tie down. We're trying to save as much rock as we can. We know every year we're going to lose some, but we're just trying to be a little bit more proactive. The roads, the foreman was out, didn't think that the roads were all that terrible to go out and plow all of them. So we're getting stuff scraped up today. Now that's hard. We've got something where we can scrape it and not lose it off the side of the road. So that's where we're at with the winter removal stuff today. Also, last week after the meeting, I was out in the shop, and we've got some mower issues, and I know that we've got some equipment budgeted for this year and next year yet, and so I think I had a mower planned for that. Our arm mower with the chemical on there, the hub tore off, and I think that thing's been welded up so many times. There's welds on welds, but we're going to rebuild it enough that we're just going to be able to use it, but I think it's time to maybe find something a little bit newer. We had a diamond mower, side mower, that the deck, a blade went through the deck from hitting the rock, and it just needed to be replated. But we do have that John Deere 7150 with the loader on it that hardly gets used, so it might be something that, because we've got the skid loader, we've got the loaders, we probably need a John Deere tractor with forks on it to move stuff around the yard anymore. And maybe it's time we put that into the system and put a mower on it and start using it. So we might just consider purchasing a side mower or another highway mower system for that tractor, then we can move things around. But we probably are looking at maybe trying to find another arm mower too for brush cutting. So just something that we're looking at here in the future, and we'll get some pricing and stuff to look at that. But
You're just referring to putting a side mower on the Deere, right?
we could either use the Deere for a side mower, or we can find an arm mower to put on the Deere. So we've got something a little bit better to cut brush and get down in deeper, because right now you guys know the Tiger mower is just a 2-wheel drive tractor, and it's pretty light, pretty old. But it does have a small head on it compared to the other mowers. So and the spray systems are a little different now too. Now, you know, you're kind of expendy. I think last time we priced one out, we were looking at around $150,000 with a used tractor and a mower system together. So if we can just use the tractor we've got and put a mower, either a side mower or an arm mower, and still maybe try to find something a little bit better, we'll be looking into those options. So
I guess I would check, do a little in-depth.
Talk a little bit, what your shoulders.
Hey, somebody else wants to be on the meeting too. Anyways, I would check with Deere to see if
Oh, yeah.
the front end would be capable of taking that length of arm out with heavy usage. It could be that the Deere may not be made for, you know, them Tiger mowers were made.
yeah,
They're tough. But
yeah.
the Deere being a row crop, it may not have the front end capable.
Yeah, and that's,
Weight out.
we'll go through the mower companies. They're the ones that kind of set some of them up too. I know we tried a couple of years ago with a 3-point rear arm mower, and it was very unstable for the system, so it didn't work very well.
Alrighty.
So we'll look at that. And then also, we have a driveway policy. Now I want to know if you guys are okay with modifying. I had a request from a landowner who bought property and has a stream cutting through their property, and they want to access the other side of the stream, but they don't really want to access it often enough that it's going to require a 24-foot driveway. And they don't want to access it with anything bigger than maybe a 4-wheeler or a small little yard tractor. And so I wasn't sure whether you guys wanted to accommodate the request and let them put in a 10-foot driveway versus a 24-foot, because they aren't gonna use it to crop anything or do anything else, but maybe go in there and try to plant some trees and maybe mow occasionally. But our policy is that the minimum 24-foot top, and so I told the individual I'd talk to the board first and see if they wanted to make an accommodation for that type of driveway or not.
Rather than amend the whole policy, I guess I'd just rather leave it up to the engineer as far as to make exceptions when exceptions
Okay.
are needed. I mean, it's
And,
not,
and maybe that's a policy we can look at too, and rewriting it and maybe get some better
I mean,
clarification.
there's, not everything always fits into the envelope of a policy, and so
Yep.
that's kind of where you come in
Okay.
involved as far as.
I just wanted to make sure that you guys set the policy, and if I'm gonna change it, I want you guys to be aware of it.
I also would like to see that, if we do that, that it would be noted that it's their driveway.
Yep.
It's not a county driveway.
And,
And down the road, I don't want a future owner, 40 years from now, saying, what, here's a driveway, it ain't wide enough, you gotta fix that for us. No.
that wouldn't be the case, and we would document something like that, that it's a special thing. I mean,
Yeah,
If
Well,
you guys-
it would, if documented, it would be the landowner's driveway,
yeah.
not a county driveway.
And maybe, like I said, maybe we can look at some policy stuff too here in the spring about maybe getting some clarification on certain policies we have now, maybe getting more policies out there so we have a better guide on how we operate, because right now it was always, we'll take it on a case-by-case basis, and that's really hard for you guys, and it's really hard for me to determine where we want case-by-case to go. If you're gonna give one to the other, one to one but somebody, then somebody else is gonna want the same thing. But if we have a policy written that explains how we're gonna handle that, that would be a lot easier for all of us.
I guess the only other thought would be, Jim, like the drunk driveway rule, you know, to have so much of a taper
Yeah.
coming up.
Those will still be required in this small,
And that's a federal thing that they kind of slapped on, that's the federal government did. So, but,
Yes, as long as it would be noted that it's their driveway.
and I don't think this individual's gonna have a problem with that, they just wanna be,
Yeah.
I asked them if they could do a low water crossing through the stream that goes through there, but on one side of the bank, obviously, if you're on the inside of the curb of the bank, that's flatter than the other side that's cut, so you can't always,
Yeah.
there's not a nice transition across because it's not a straight stream that runs through the property, so it's hard for them to put a low water crossing in there to try to do something without major expense, and if, you know, so they just figure a driveway would be a small little accessible
Yeah.
driveway for a small tractor or a small four-wheeler, or UTV or something to get across would be fine.
I just worry about the future when
Mhm.
the current landowner is gone and everybody in here is gone and
It'll be
the
done.
new landowner says, hey, what's up with this? I want this fixed, I want this took care of, I want it wider.
Well, and typically
Not
anybody
ours.
that winds a driveway is their responsibility anyway. They've got that, they guess when they purchased the property, they purchased the driveway issues with it, so.
Okay,
If you guys are okay with that, I'll proceed that way, and they'll be
Yep.
happy to hear that we can make that accommodation. We don't get very many of those requests, but,
yeah, that's why I feel, it's rather than amend the whole policy, just
okay.
like that. So,
Because like putting in a driveway, like if I wanna put a driveway in, it's up to me to put it in, you're not gonna.
Correct.
Correct.
Right.
Yep.
So, but we wanna kinda keep it to a minimum of, you know, and, you know, a typical driveway, 24-foot wide is good for a lot of equipment. Some of the stuff's getting so big now it's not, but on a typical 24-foot wide, that's wider than some of the highways, so that should be adequate for people to turn it out. But when you're talking about a small little four-wheeler or something just to get access to, it's safer for them to have a driveway than it is to try to traverse the ditch, so.
yeah.
All right, well, we'll head that direction then, and I'll let him know.
Any other?
Are driveways required to have gravel on or not, or is that?
The policy states that they do, but as you guys know, over time, the gravel kind of just gets mingled in and you got dirt coming through, and sometimes you just have a grass top, but according to the policy right now, they're supposed to be topped with rock.
I see one going this summer and it still doesn't have gravel on it.
Well, and I guess in a certain sense,
Doesn't matter.
in a certain sense, does it matter to us whether there's rock on it or not? Other than the fact that when you pull out, you could be pulling mud onto the road. Now, that's a situation we wouldn't want to have happen often, but even during harvest, we all know whether there's rock in a driveway or not. If it's a wet harvest, you're pulling mud whether there's rock or not, so. But we can, if you've got those locations, we can kind of remind them that the policy states that they put rock in it.
And yes, there's what I wanted, we don't rock the driveway.
We don't.
Right, I didn't think you did that.
We used to, but we do not now.
We don't have the time or the funding available for that to we'd spend a lot of time rocking driveways every year, and if we did.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
And I think maybe the general consensus of most people is, you're the one that uses the driveway, why do the taxpayers pay to maintain it? And so, other than the fact that we wanna make sure that the culverts are always taking water properly, that's the extent of the maintenance that I think we kinda looked at most in secondary roads, was let's make sure the water drains through there and that we got the proper side slopes. But as far as top maintenance, you guys need to be, the landowner needs to be responsible for maintaining that top, because they're the ones that are using it. I think that's the practice we've always practiced in secondary roads for a long time, was that way, so.
Do we have anything else, Rich?
I'm good for today.
So, yeah, I have some things. So in regards to the projects that we're looking at and the funding for Kirkwood and that type of thing,
Mhm.
if, I'm not one for really pushing projects back, because all it does is keep us behind then.
Yep.
And if you're seeking funding in order to do that, when's the letting date for those?
They are April, but I think we're pushing the limit as far as making even an April letting, and I don't think that letting in May is gonna be really conducive. I know there's not gonna be a lot of work out there from what I've been told for contractors, but when you start to push May, now you're looking at June before you get all the contract work done, and they're already scheduled out to start in May, so we could, they still have landowner meetings to do yet before we do anything with right of way, so.
So where I'm going with that is, if that's the route that we're gonna go, not saying we are, but if we are gonna fund it a different way, we're gonna need to discuss this in time so that we don't, I don't want a August, September letting type thing happening. I mean, we need to know what we're doing so we can get the money
So,
in front of you in time.
so are you proposing we still try to hit the April letting dates for these projects and then figure out funding later?
No,
Because
I'm just saying that if
I think what we're
it's a
gonna,
discussion we're gonna have so we all know what we're doing, rather than just
yep.
all of a sudden, let's try to figure
So,
out.
so here's what I'm gonna propose then, is I think that because we're all new at this and everything else, and these projects are gonna probably need some additional funding, maybe we look back and say, if we're gonna try to fund these things, maybe we look at a late fall letting for next season, because the current farm to market funding won't fund these projects anyway, and it keeps the other projects we have planned kind of in the loop, so maybe we can just push these off until October, November, December letting, because the plans are done. It's just a matter of funding, and if we've got a little bit of time, we can kind of massage everything a little bit better and not rush so deep and so fast into it. I know that the people living on these corridors are anticipating and wanting stuff to get done, and I've had a couple conversations with them saying, we didn't forget about it, but we need to figure out maybe a better way to fund it if this is the route we're taking. So I think maybe for the time being, we'll stick with the one foothill project for this year, and then we can look better at any other funding sources. We'll know how fiscal 21 ends by June 30th to know where the farm to market funds are and everything else, and we can maybe get a better projection from there as to what money we have available for another year letting. Does that sound?
It's not up to you guys.
So them other two roads then would be for the next year?
Yeah.
They'd be on the top of the list or not?
What's that?
They would be on the top of the list for the next year? unless
Well, I
they
guess the
came up-
plans are there, and you never know what kind of funding bill the feds might come out with the new administration. They might, we've got shovel-ready projects in the sense that if they end up coming out with some funding, we could be ready to go with something too, so. I think, yes, I think for the most part, the way projects are set up now, that, you know, I did push the Kirkwood project back another year in the program that I submitted to you guys last week, and I kept Hickory in, but that puts us way negative in the farm to market balance, and the deeper you go, the longer it takes to get back out, and if you're borrowed ahead a couple years, it takes you a couple years to get back out, you're not gonna be able to borrow ahead further than the 3 years, so you're not playing with a lot of money on projects anyway. So if this board is not completely objective to TIF, there's an opportunity to have the money to do that. That's entirely up to this board and whether we want to TIF anything or not. I'm just telling you, if you guys want a TIF, I've got projects we can use that TIF money for.
And I don't want to get into the big TIF discussion.
Right, no, we don't need to get into that.
But the only reason I'm gonna say this is because it's something that we're gonna have to think about for something like this. We have a funding need for this, And I know the conservation also has a funding need for property they wanna purchase. So if it's something that we're favorable for, it's not, it's probably to our advantage to have this discussion at one of these meetings, is if we wanna do this or not. And if we do wanna do this, we can make this thing happen this year. So it's something we're gonna have to talk about.
Yeah.
So, and I think now is a good time to be talking, if we can relax these projects for another season, we can have a better goal and a better scope of what's gonna happen next time, and then we know that the funding's there, we know that the projects will be there, we know that we can do them, instead of a big question mark in front as well. You know, I've got a project in Worth County the same way, where we don't know who had the funding, the board hasn't really made a decision yet whether they want a TIF, and I just said, hey, look, it's in the program now, if you guys decide to TIF, we have the money, we can do the project, but if we don't, we can still pull it out. But right now, we're kind of in the same situation with funding, and the way the dollars are now, you know, I don't know, property taxes and road use taxes with COVID and everything else, how the funding's gonna continue to go, if it's gonna go down. Like I said, we don't know whether there'll be a different kind of a funding bill when the new administration takes the presidency or not, so a lot of things in question right now, and it might be better for everybody to take a step back and reevaluate where we're at.
The concern I had was TIF was last summer when there was, you know, studies of finances of Mitchell County said they should not TIF for the next 2 years because of what they already have TIF.
Mhm.
And Mark said that at a meeting here last summer.
I'll show you that report, I've read that, and I have not seen that in that report.
Okay, I just know what he
Yep.
said, and I go by what I heard at a meeting, you know.
Maybe it's in there, but I have not seen that statement.
Okay.
So,
Well, this decision today helps me program for fiscal '22 yet. I know we have projects in there, but now I can shuffle some things around before the DOT program goes through in April, so we can kind of better focus on where we're headed. If this is how, I think it's a good idea, I guess, to kind of get our ducks in a row for this, so.
Yeah.
Whether you're for TIF or not TIF, it's a discussion that we should have.
I guess on that, if it's in the report or not, I don't know if it is or not, but that was something that the state auditor indicated to
What was
Lois.
that, the state auditor? Okay, I don't remember if it was indicated, but it said that.
We would be in our best not to
This is,
TIF
this is,
for a couple of years.
this is the S&T report as far as for the last time we did something, it was in that report, standard reports report, so.
Well, that's something we should look at, you know.
And I guess one other clarification from last week too, I know when Jim asked the question about seeing my budget go higher, and when I budget my department for the year, I'm using the secondary road fund, I'm not budgeting for asking more from taxes, and I think that's one thing I maybe didn't make clear last week was, you might see the budget go up and down, but I work within my constraints of my carryover balance and what is projected to be income, and then what I expect for expenses. So I'm not, when I budget, I don't say I wanna ask for more tax dollars, that's not when I budget, and you might read it in that letter that I wrote you was, because our funding isn't the same as everybody else's, we do, whatever budget we don't use, we don't give back, it stays in the secondary road fund because a good portion of that money is actually road use tax money, where a lot of other departments in the county don't have road use tax to use as much as we do. So take the auditor's office, for example, I think if they've got a certain budget they come out of, I don't know what fund they come out of, the general fund for operations, but if they don't use it, I guess, don't use it, you lose it.
Right.
Whereas secondary road fund's a little different, and it's good that it's that way because of the way projects get built and paid for. And so just so you guys are aware, when I program and do my budget, I haven't ever asked for more tax money unless it comes out as TIF or whatever, and I've never asked for it, I think it's always been kind of given, but when I budget for my constraints that I have in my bank account, if you will. So,
Your surplus.
yep. So it might fluctuate, it might see an increase, but that doesn't mean it's gonna get all spent, just depend on how operations work for the year. So I just wanted to clarify that, because I don't know if I clarified that last week.
I didn't realize that was part of it.
And you might not know this morning, but how many people are working in the shop? I guess I always view the shop as 2 people can keep busy all the time in there. If you start having more, I guess I'd kind of like to have an idea of what people are doing if you're having 3 or 4 people working in the shop. Do you know now, or?
Right now today, everybody's out, that can be out scraping roads, and then if they're in the shop, I know that they're doing some welding on these mowers, getting them ready for spring and summer, so. It fluctuates between 3, maybe 4, depending. I know the last day we've been hauling man sand, so everybody's been out busy.
If we're at 3 or 4, I guess I'd kinda like to know what the people are doing then. If it's 2, I'm okay with it.
Yep.
If we have 3 or 4, I kinda wanna start, so I want to know what people are working on.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, any other questions or comments to Rich?
How's your roof coming, or is it done?
I think they're still trying to put some trim on it yet, the snow and everything else, it's kind of, they've been a little bit, I don't know, they haven't been back, I just know they got some of the trim left to do, I think the roof itself is done,
Working out okay?
yeah.
That's it.
All right.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Rich. Yep.
Thanks. Approve recorder's quarterly report. We have that in front of us. The second page looks like it's pretty much self-explanatory. So I guess we can't ask Pat any questions, but it looks like it's all self-explanatory. She's got it all right down to where the money's from.
I talked with her yesterday, and she said that the $661 is the fund that she's allowed to pretty much keep and to update some of her equipment in her office, so that's what that is. I'll move to approve the recorder's quarterly report.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Marcus seconded it. Any further comment? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So, recorder's quarterly report of fees is approved. Moving on, the auditor's quarterly report of revenue. Total amount paid to county treasurer of $18,100.30.
Lindsay, do you know how the election things go as far as the fund that shows that? Do you, that 17,000, do you have any idea how that works?
I do not. I know
Okay.
Rachel and Renee worked on this, and I believe Rachel should be on the line to answer any questions that you guys have.
I guess, Rachel, are you there?
She told me she'd be on yesterday.
It's not a big deal,
Okay.
I was just curious that OT fund, if that's for elections or what, I just didn't know. Just something that I could learn something, I
Sure.
guess, so that's all.
Don't you get reimbursement from the state for elections or not? Is that where the maybe comes from, or not?
I don't know, honestly.
Okay.
Rachel, I'm not sure why she's not on.
I think there is some, in that respect, I'm not sure. but-
Okay. I'm good with it.
All right, so that I take would be the motion.
Sure,
from Jim.
I'll move to approve the auditor's quarterly report of revenue.
I can second that.
And we have a second from Mike. So, any other comments? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Hearing none, approved. Crisis intervention donation, and I will let Jim have the floor on that.
We got a letter from Crisis Intervention Service. I'm just gonna read the first paragraph to give an idea as far as what they do. It says, "Dear Supervisors, Crisis Intervention Service is a private nonprofit organization that has provided services to North Iowans since 1977. Crisis Intervention Service promotes a society free from violence and oppression through social change, effective community partnerships, and awareness. The mission of Crisis Intervention Services is to provide persons affected by domestic violence, sexual assault, and homicide with professional, confidential, 24-hour services including safety and support, and to prevent violence in our communities through education. There's a lot more to the letter, but that's kind of gives an idea as far as what they do. Last paragraph, second to last paragraph says, Crisis Intervention Services is requesting $500 from Mitchell County to support safe housing, crisis services, counseling, and community education programs at Crisis Intervention Service for the 21-22 fiscal year. So they want $500.
Is this something we've donated to in the past?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So it's just-
In fact, they were on the TV on the news last night for something that we had accomplished in Mason City. I went over my head, I didn't catch it all, but I caught some of it anyways. They are something, they had to do with sexual assault. They had something going on where they were accepting donations there in Mason City, and they described what they could do in the event of a sexual assault. And, but anyways,
I'll make a motion to donate $500.
we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I will second that.
We have a second. Any further comments? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Hearing none, we have approved the $500 for crisis intervention. Number 9, discussion and possible action on the Wapsie watershed. That's my organization, and I hope everybody remembered to look at the paperwork. And this has to do with the, we have a part-time coordinator for the Upper Wapsie Watershed Management Authority. And what they're looking for is a contribution from the different organizations and counties and cities that are part of this watershed. And there's 2 scenarios, but there's a third one. The third option we have is not anything. The Upper Wapsie comes into our northeast corner of Mitchell County, and it cuts a little swath down through, and I think it probably covers 10, 12 miles of county, maybe a little more. And with this being the watershed, they are looking for a little money to help pay for the coordinator. And this one thing I don't understand, and I never really got it out of the coordinator who's asking for this, is why they needed it, because Upper Cedar, they don't have to fund the coordinator, but they have a full-time coordinator, and he's paid for, or he or she is paid for through the grants and stuff on that watershed, and I don't understand quite why Wapsie is different. But it's a part-time coordinator. They're from the RC&D, and anyways, with the first scenario, the coordinator would coordinate, facilitate the annual board meetings, would also coordinate and facilitate the executive committee and other board meetings as assigned. Third, they would support and represent the Upper Wapsie Watershed Board at the statewide meetings. Number 4, they would maintain a website. Number 5, they would do grant identifications, and that's where I always thought there was funding come from. And number 6, they would be in for the grant proposal and development and coordination. In other words, with the monies that they get from the grants, then they would provide support for the communities in which how to utilize that money. Now, at that scenario, if 32 contributors, they would only need $350 a year. That would be their amount, would be $7,500. Now, on the scenario number 2, number 1 would perform all the tasks associated with scenario number 1. It would also coordinate yearly Upper Wapsipinicon watershed sampling efforts. And they do testing of the water on the Wapsi. Unfortunately, I question them, and they do not work in conjunction with Mill Dolans on his testing here in our soil, water, soil conservation. They're not together, so I don't know why they don't get together. Anyways, number 3, they would grant proposal development for member entities up to 3 per year. And I don't see that being any different than on the first. And then number 4, they would coordinate a watershed outreach, which would develop presentations and materials to be distributed out to the members. They'd have a quarterly newsletter, attend city council meetings and commissioner meetings and supervisor meetings. And they would also work with the board to design and develop a funding strategy for watershed boundary signage. Anyways, that's the 2, and that one would be at $500, a donation from Mitchell County of $500. Or, like I said, the 3rd scenario is we don't have to give them nothing.
Because this is something new, correct?
This is something that they've never done before. And I would think that the Upper Wapsi watershed would be the same as the Upper Cedar. They would get their funding through the grants and stuff, but apparently they're trying to do this. So
Because we're already testing the water, correct?
we are testing it, but they test it again.
We're testing.
This is, I should, as the board member on this board, I have to bring this up because I have to stick up for them.
Yeah.
We are the beginning of the Wapsi up here, up at the state line. It's the beginning. You can jump across it.
Yeah.
But down there, where we have our meetings at Independence, it's a big river. It looks like the Big Cedar. And like they brought up, you start it. You bring the water. You're the start of it. It comes down to us. So they are right. We pick up the water. It starts here as it funnels down our creeks and creeks down to the Wapsi here in Mitchell County. That makes the river bigger as it goes into Howard and Chickasaw, and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger.
Did you tell them that it's clean up here though? Since this is the start?
Yeah, it is pretty clean.
I have to stand up for them on that. But what I have noticed as being a board member to the Upper Wapsi is the majority of the millions of dollars they get out of these grants, and that's where I don't understand where
Why they need more.
7,500 and then, or the next amount. That's a pittance, 15,000 a year. It's a pittance compared to what we get in the grants, but.
So how many people belong to this? I know they said if they had 32 people.
Well, like all board meetings, you never know how many's all there because you've got some that don't show up at one meeting and some others that, it's a different group of people. We'll fill a room like this, we'll fill it.
Yeah.
I mean, chair to chair, we'll fill a room with people if they all come. But majority of the money that I see spent is spent down there. But, this is why I brought this up, and I made everybody
Yeah.
the information, had it copied so you could read it and look at it, but,
$350 is not a lot of money, and I'm all for clean water and stuff, but the other side of that is that, you know, we are testing the water ourselves. We approved some money this last time to do that. And again, $350 is not very much money. The only concern I have with something like this is that $350 now in 10 years turns into $3,500 or whatever, because they've shifted their focus from grants to getting the money directly from the county sources, and that's how it's being funded. So that's the only concern I have.
again, I'm no skin in the game, I'm just a board member, we don't have to give them a penny.
And I'd say, you know, it doesn't cover a lot of square miles of, you know, of Mitchell County.
No, and as that one person stated, but you started.
Well, yeah.
I have to back that person on it, you started.
Yeah.
You're at the beginning of it here in Iowa.
You know, like the Shell Rock doesn't cover much of Mitchell County either, you know, it's kind of.
Well, that one.
But I mean, it's a different thing, yeah.
But anyways, any thoughts or comments? Would we want to have a contribution to them? There's my question. I'm staying neutral on this. I want to hear your thoughts, your comments.
Comments, Mark?
I don't know, it's a tough one. You say 350 is not much, but they're gonna be down the road, but unless we do it this one time and
Well,
see
again,
what we get out of it.
this is something that we don't have to.
Yeah, we kind of have to be good neighbors.
I think so too. I will put that
I'll
out
put
there.
a plug in it and shut it off so it doesn't start flowing now. It's not an option.
Yes, I will add that I think, you know, it is something that we are part of. $350 isn't a lot of money, or $500 isn't a lot of money. And yes, down the road, if they want to keep jacking it, and again, I don't quite understand why they're doing this, but again, the only thing I see is that the upper Cedar, their coordinator comes out of the grants and stuff, and as this, our coordinator here, apparently does not.
Possibly the way they have their things structured as far as where the money flows. I mean, I don't know.
Well, I know they go through millions of dollars, because I've been part of this for 2.5 years, and they get grants of millions of dollars. But why they use that money up when they could just take $1,500 out of it and do this, for, you know,
You think they will come up to Mitchell County and test the water then? Or what? Or you don't know?
they claim they get up here.
Is it something we could request a report we're getting proof that they're doing what they say they're gonna do?
Well, would be what I get, would be it.
I would think 350 would be all right, and would show some interest in it.
Yeah.
Show them that work.
Okay. Yep.
Good.
Good neighbors, like you said.
So would that be a
I'll make a
motion?
motion to give it 350.
Mark has made a motion to contribute $350 to the Upper Wapsie Watershed Management Authority. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a second. Any comments, further comments? Hearing none. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, say nay. Hearing none. We have approved a $350 funding request for the Upper Wapsie. Thank you. Number 10, clarify NIVIC board appointment. And again, I think that's something that I have to address because, and Rachel didn't understand. It's been about a year and a half ago. NIVIC was its own separate entity, and they combined with another, and I went to look in my literature that I did not, after I became no longer a member of the NIVIC board, I removed it from the folder in there. I don't remember the name of the other organization that melted in together with NIVIC. The two became one, and they had their own board members. And the NIVIC had its board, well, they didn't no longer need to have all these board members. And some of us were asked if we didn't want to be on that board anymore, to allow them, some of the other board members to come in, that we could drop out of it. And I dropped out of it, so that's why we don't have a board member on NIVIC anymore. Are you there, Rachel?
I am here.
Okay, so did you hear or understand what we have?
And I had put it on the last time because I added down as it was a board still, so that's the only reason I had put it on there.
They had two.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that.
They had two organizations come together, so they had to dispose of some of the board members.
Yep.
And
And sorry about that, the phone were muted, but I'll answer Jim's question quick back on the auditor's quarterly report. We have received a grant for CARES. The Secretary of State sent us money for all of our precincts and then a lump sum for just the general election. So normally it is not that large.
thank you.
Yep.
Do they get reimbursed for that?
Did you hear Mark's question, Rachel?
No, I didn't.
Do we get reimbursed from that from the state or for elections?
So this year it was just different with having to COVID and extra expenses and cleaning. They sent out, I believe it was $600 per precinct. Then the other lump sum was just for having the general election and extra stuff being put into it. So normally we don't receive that money.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Anyways, getting back to the NIVIC, that's why we do not have a board member going there anymore, is because we were kind of dissolved out of it. So, thank you, Rachel.
Have a good day.
You too. Items of note. Meetings attended. Has anybody had? Jim, did you?
Yes.
I had one at the fair board, and they're getting ready for their 150th fair this summer. Plan on a big one, so. That's all I have.
Now, relating back to the fair board, did Todd ever, on our last meeting, did he ever question any of them out there? Any more consideration of maybe giving a little more, being this is the big year? Or
I don't know if he did, but I have some thoughts on that. So I guess when somebody comes to us and requests money from us in regards to a budget, my thoughts are that when an auditor's office requests their budget, they should be fiscally responsible as far as this is the amount of money that we need and this is what we need to operate. And so personally, me, I respect that's what they're asking for. The government is not in where this is going was, a thought was that since the fair is our 150th, maybe we would give them more than what the fair board requested this year. That's what a discussion had taken place, that's where I'm going with this. So I don't really feel that government's in the job to be giving bonuses, so to speak. If the fair board wanted the amount that they requested, which we were probably going to honor, that's what we should give them. If they wanted more, then that was their responsibility to ask for more. Because when they came in and sat in here, they should have went through as far as their numbers to figure out, this is what we need. You don't ask more from the taxpayers than what you need. If they run into a situation where they don't have enough money to do this thing, I'm totally open for them to come back in and say, hey, what we submitted was maybe a little bit shy, since this is our 150th, would you consider amending it and giving us some more? I'd be open to listening to that, but I'm not really for just us assuming the responsibility that, yeah, maybe we should just give them a little bit more. I don't want to go that route. That's my thoughts.
Any other comments?
No, they were sitting pretty good on the budget.
Steve?
Yes.
This is Mark. I just have one comment. I don't know if you remember this, but a few years ago, during our audit, the auditor said that we should have a policy in place when anybody comes in and asks for money. And I think we've gotten away from that policy. The request had to be in writing. It had to be what was specifically going to be used for. If they were a 501c3, they had to provide us with a copy of their 501c3 letter. There were just a lot of things that the auditor suggested we should do, and we did adopt a policy or a resolution on that. Of course, what happens is you kind of forget about it. But we probably should go back on these requests to that old policy, which is, put it in writing, tell us what it's going to be used for, give us a copy of your 501c3 letter, and things like that. I just wanted to add that because we've kind of gotten away from it. I myself am guilty of not having reminded the board before, hey, this is how we're supposed to do it. So I'm just bringing that up.
Yeah, I think we are in that thinking. I just wanted to revisit this because Todd did bring it up and he ain't here. And truthfully, I think the way Jim has stated it is all the way. But Todd is not here. I just wanted to bring that up. So I think we've clarified it and we can move on that. So enough said on that. Thank you, Mark. Jim, you have meetings attended?
I have a meeting. I attended a North Iowa Juvenile Detention Services meeting, and they have 3 areas that they actually work. They have what's called detention, they have crisis center, and they have subacute. Regarding their detention report, Medicaid currently stops when individuals are admitted to that type of detention. And there is discussion on their part for efforts to get changes to Medicaid so Medicaid can continue for kids in detention. Mental health has become a big part of detentions, and the cost is a huge expense that falls on the taxpayers. Another item within that is that starting December 21st of 21, adult waiver kids will no longer be housed in jails. The responsibility to hold them will be falling on detention centers across the state. North Iowa Detention Service already holds some adult waiver children, but they may start to see an increase in the number of adult waivers when that takes effect. As far as the other area that they work with, it's called Crisis Center. And let's see here. The Crisis Center generally is a 3 to 5 day program, but it's extended based on need. And currently our mental health disability services throughout the state are in regions. And our region is the County Social Services region. And that region's gonna be broke up a little bit. Come July, Cerro Gordo, Hancock, Wright, Humboldt, Webster, Pocahontas, and Emmett counties are no longer gonna be part of the County Social Services region. And juvenile detention will still be able to accept clients from those counties, but they need to collaborate with those regions to ensure funding is being paid for those individuals. County Social Services will change how they are funding the clients past their insurance days. That means the provider's going to have to document why that individual needs to stay there longer. Then the other area is subacute. This has to do with more challenging clients that they work with, mental health and substance abuse clients. They're seeing clients utilize the facility for longer periods. These extended stays, in most cases, are intellectually disabled individuals who are being kicked out of their placements. With the support of County Social Services, the facility is able to take on these more difficult clients and prevent them from sitting in hospitals. These are challenging individuals, and so sometimes there's incidences with staff in regards to assault and self-harm. Staff worked with them, and they're very good people. The other thing that they want to possibly develop is crisis services for youth, and the reason for that is when some of these other counties drop out, those services are actually being provided in 2 of those counties, but we're going to lose those counties when they drop out of County Social Services. So they're thinking of starting that up. This is a long-term goal for them, but these existing sites will no longer be available due to those counties leaving the region. Long-term plan is to add the service due to need. Existing North Iowa Juvenile Detention Service site is full. They have no room where they're at, so they need to look for an existing building somewhere else. They were thinking possibly a nursing home that's not being used anymore or something like that. They would have to remodel it and that kind of thing. So that was my meeting. Sorry if that was long, but that was my meeting.
Mike?
We had a conservation board meeting last Wednesday, and they had minutes and claims that they passed for the previous month, and as far as the can recycling for the year is going well, they probably got $15,000 out of that, because they had 2 semi-trailers full. They caught up on all that, so looking forward, they're looking for somewhere to $5,000 to $10,000 a year out of that, and they looked at applications for caretaker for Riverside Park, and I decided on Paul Hutland. He lived right across the river in John Adams' old house. I don't know, familiar with that, but he's a previous jailer in Wisconsin, so I thought he'd be ideal. So, since he's right there too, so they did hire him. He had a number of applications, but anyway, then they talked about some raises for all the employees and talked about adding another employee, which he talked about when he was here. Elaine Govern was there and talked in length about the Wapsie, the trail, the bike trail over there, her and her group that takes care of it and all that. And I think they got money in their budget that they help them out with that too, because they maintain the flowers and the whatever, you know, make it pretty. And they talked about having 10 seasonal campsites at Riverside, permanent. I don't know, they have only 3 applications and 1 that might be interested so far. So
Permanent, year-round.
yeah, year round. For at least $2 grand is how they're,
Okay.
what they're gonna go for, but they haven't got. And they approved their budget and, which was presented to us then, so. Meeting adjourned about 9 p.m.
If they get some permanent campers up there, they might want to cable them down.
Oh, okay, why?
In the spring.
Oh,
Isn't that just for the season?
yeah, just for the season, it'd be like, I don't know if you can leave them year round or.
Well, when you said, I thought maybe that's what you referred to as all year long.
Well, they said 10 seasonal sites, I don't know.
Season, maybe it is just summertime. Okay.
Yeah, but you get floods in the summer.
Well, I'm gonna bore you because I got needs.
Okay.
I had Floyd Mitchell Chickasaw landfill, I'm gonna keep short and sweet. Agenda approved, minutes approved, bills approved. Citizens Forum, this was from Alan from Gendro. He had a comment. He asked if the landfill was hiring a full-time director, and he made a comment about the tipping fees are not as approved in the manual. Moving on, new business discussion on the job description of the director, and they looked into 4 different descriptions for director. The discussion regard tipping fees. We're just going to leave that alone. I don't quite understand that. Anyways, clarification on a paragraph regarding clothing and reimbursement in employees' handbook. Stipulated 150 for boots and 400 for clothes. That's how we read it, and that's what they will get. Director report. There's up front, there's a row of trees along the highway there. They're grown, they've matured, they're starting to fall down, and they're wrecking the fence. So what they're going to do is tear them out, plant new trees. That's going to be through the conservation, they're going to get the trees. We discussed the updated RCC contract with Howard County, and then they presented the proposal for an update of the convenience area, and the convenience area at the landfill is where you can get in easier to unload your stuff out of your car or pick up front. And they're going to revamp that area and move it south. They're going to have more roll-offs, and this would get people out of the way so they're not in the way of the drivers out back with the real garbage trucks dumping out in the landfill. You don't have to pick up a car in front of you that's stuck. Yeah, this will be a full board decision, so this will be a decision made by the main group of people here at the next meeting. And the next meeting will be March 11th. That is a full board meeting. Moving on. I had North Central Regional Response Commission meeting. That was January 13th, called to order, approved agenda. We had election of officers. They're the same, I'm making this quick. They had a financial report, everything was on par and approved. Unfinished business is a contract training, approve a training contract, and that's with Iowa Lakes. It was approved. They had a contract with Mason City. There's an update. It's not quite finished, but it will be soon, and it will be sent to the Mason City Fire Department for signature. New business. The 4-year 20 audit report. Nothing shady, all comments positive. That was approved. 21 budget amendment. $10,000 usually spent. They hadn't spent it in 2 years, so they had $20,000. Anyways, they will increase spending for Mason City equipment to $20,000, and then that money for this current year, that it'll stay in an account. Anyways, they are going to get the 20 grants account. Authorization for a bank credit card. This will be going to Aaron Beamer. That's who will be on the name of it. That's who the name's on the card. And they're going to check with the auditor for recommendations, but they're going to have a limit of $2,000. Next meeting, April 14th, 2021. North Central Regional Emergency Planning District Committee meeting. Call to order, had a quorum, approved the minutes, election of officers. And we had a hazmat team report. There was no issues, no responses the last quarter. They did some training with equipment. They ordered new hazmat suits. They're level A suits, allows more rescue capabilities. New business. We had training reports, training proposals, and then they discussed the HMEP grant. And the grant was sent off 2 weeks ago. No training yet, but we're using this grant for the last quarter. Old business, they had a service contract with Mason City update. We had no comments on the floor. So our next meeting on that will be April 14th too. And my last meeting that I have was the Region 2 RPA Policy Board meeting. That is part of NIACOG also. They had called the meeting to order, approved the agenda, welcomed the new members, which I was one of them. Election of officers, reviewed and approved the minutes from October of 2020. And then they discussed the RPA 2 STP and the TAP fund financials. Don't ask me what them are. They discuss ITAP / STBG process and timeline update. And they had some other discussion topics. An Iowa DOT update. And that meeting was adjourned. Our next meeting, that will also be April 14th. So that was my meetings. Moving on. Manure management plan updates. Do we have any new ones?
She said, we do have one here, Iowa Select Farms, the facility name is Thorson South. The facility address is 4255 40th Street in Riceville.
Okay.
So, that's all for that.
Next is the clerk of court monthly report, and I had it here somewhere in this mess. There it is. I found it. By Stacy Olson, Clerk of District Court of the above named county and state, do hereby certify the following is true and the correct statement of fees collected by me in my office for the month ending December 31st of 2020, and the total is $1,625.47. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, this is a so noted. So, moving on is public comments. Is there any public comments out there?
Got a layout.
That's it. Thank you for the comment, Charlie. I don't see anybody here in the public, but I am going to have a comment. I didn't get to discuss this on the first two meetings because we had so much on it. Anyways, we are going to keep the same public comment rules that we had in the past, and the only thing that I will bring up is the fact that to make sure that when someone stands up and they have the floor, they have 3 minutes. 3 minutes to sit and get out what they have come here to say. Once that 3 minutes is up, and I mean, I got the watch on now, because I've seen people in here for 10 minutes or more have the floor. That's not going to happen with me. Barb always said 3 minutes, but when it came to a certain few people, they chatted away. That's not going to happen. So,
Could you read that, Steve, just for reference then?
okay, after being recognized by the chair, please come to the front chair, that chair. Speak one time on one topic for 3 minutes. Action cannot be taken by the board, but we can put it on in the future agenda if needed or passed. But you got 3 minutes. State your name if you're representing an organization. Keep comments to the subject and refrain from personal or slanderous remarks. The auditor will announce when 30 seconds is left. Well, never did. And at the end, we'll have the right to stop you and allow the next citizens to have a chance to speak. Also, something that I did halfway through the meeting today was a reminder to turn off your cell phone. But anyways, we don't want this continual 10-minute yakking. And another thing is we don't want to have, I think the county attorney called it the step talking, where they go back and forth, the step chatter, that won't happen. So, anyways, do you guys have anything to add maybe to this that you think would be?
Yeah, I do.
Jim?
Excuse me. County attorney has said a couple times that this meeting is just for us, and it's not really for the public. So I'm not necessarily against public comment, but I guess the key word in that to me is comment. It's not comment and questions. So,
Correct.
if somebody comes and has a comment, that's one thing. If somebody comes and has a question about something, that could possibly be something different. And any questions, we have an agenda as far as what has been published for the public that we're going to discuss. When a comment turns into a question, that's something that has not been put on the agenda. So in my mind, a question is not approved because it's not on the agenda. Comments are different. That's my thought.
Thank you. So, I guess we're done. And I don't see anybody else left in the room to make a comment from Charlie, except for Charlie and our burned out light. So, hearing no more, I guess we will end this meeting. Thank you.